Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Bolo. Rupa sir, how much time do we have?
An hour and a half.
Vani Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti. Everyone all together. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Bolo. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Everyone all together. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya, Prabhupada Jaya. Jaya Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Prabhupada Jaya. Jai Gaura Haribo, 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 Gaura Haribo. Shri Guru Nitai Gaur Premanande, Srila Prabhupada Ke. Shri Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Prabhupada Ke. Shri Prem Data Nityananda Prabhu Ke. Shri Prem Purushottam Sacinandana Gaura Hari Ke. Bolo Giriraj Maharaj Ki. Shri Radhakund Shamakund Giri Govardhan Ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ke. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham Ki. Shri Purushottam Keta Jagannath Puri Dham Ki. Gaur Premanande Hari Hari Gaur Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ke. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru Govinda. All glories to Shri Prabhupada. Shankar Prabhu. So, I'd like to read something tonight from the Bhagavad Gita, so we can, for those of you who know the Mangala Charna, we can recite together. How late do we go? Okay, that's great, thank you. Om Jnana Timirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshunmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindho Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay. So, I wasn't Shankar asked a question a few minutes ago. How, if there's any people here, how many were here for the first time tonight? I didn't see that. I'm kind of curious also. Anyone here for the first time? Raise your hand. Very good. Thank you very much for coming. So, I'd like to read a little something from the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna's words to Arjuna. This is chapter 17, text number 18, in case some of you have a Bhagavad Gita with you and you want to see this verse. Very nice verse. I'll read the original Sanskrit and then the translation. Satkara manapujartam tapodhambena chaiva yat kriyate tad iha proktam rajasam chalam adruvam. Penance. Here in this place, Krishna is speaking about religious activities that are done in three modes of nature: goodness, passion, ignorance. And here he's speaking about penance. And in this particular verse is speaking about proktam rajasam chalam adbruvam, penance in the mode of passion. He says, the translation is that penance performed, doing austerities or penances, penance performed out of pride and for the sake of gaining respect, honor, and worship, is said to be in the mode of passion. It is neither stable nor permanent. There's a nice commentary from His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Sometimes penance and austerity are executed to attract people and receive honor, respect, and worship from others. Persons in the mode of passion arrange to be worshipped by subordinates and let them wash their feet and offer riches. Such arrangements, artificially made by the performance of penances, are considered to be in the mode of passion. The results are temporary. They can be continued for some time, but they're not permanent. Gora graganya gana gota gularuharam Goranga gura tamagopyada kopa briksham Gopala gada ratidam yati singha gora Govinda deshi kavaram satatam namami. So in this verse, Krishna is speaking about so many people in the world today. Everyone wants some respect. They want to be appreciated by others. And some people go to great lengths to do that. There's somebody in the world somewhere who's taken the challenge to swallow more live worms than anybody else in the world so that he can get his name in the Guinness Book of World Records. And he can be a famous person. I swallowed more worms than anyone else in the world. Just completely crazy and ridiculous things. So this is the nature of the material world. People, they think that the more that I get respect, the more that they recognize how great I am, then the more I'm a success in life. There's a nice song that we sing sometimes. Actually, how many of you know a little of this song, Goranga Karuna Koro? Raise your hand. Okay. So, let's see, maybe we'll sing this and we chant Hare Krishna in response. Double time on Hare Krishna. Gauranga Karuna Koro Ame Dina Hina Jane. Bolo bolo. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Samo Patita Prabhu Nahi Tribhuvane. Bolo bolo. Hare Krishna Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So the poet, he sings that Gauranga Karuna Koro. Oh my dear Lord Gauranga, Gauranga Karuna Koro, please be merciful to me. And perhaps the Lord says, why should I be merciful to you? And he says, Ami Dina Hina Jani. I'm very, very fallen and low. And then perhaps the Lord says, there's so many people who are very, very fallen and low. He says, my case is special. Mosamo Pati Nahi Tribhuvani. In all the three worlds, you won't find anyone as fallen as myself. Now, try to imagine that you're going for a job interview tomorrow. And the person who's interviewing you for the job, he asks you, what is your qualification? And you tell him, well, to be really honest with you, I'm the most useless person in the whole world. Is it a good idea? No. But in the spiritual sense, this is wanted. In the material sense, everyone wants to be the top dog. Wants to be the most respected, the most famous. And they think this is success in life. If I can get my picture on Time Magazine, if I can't get my picture on Time Magazine, I'll have someone fix it on Photoshop. And I'll put it up on the wall like I was in Time Magazine to show everybody. Right? Some people have a mentality like that. Because this is the nature of material life. Intuitively, in material life, we have the understanding that I'm going to get satisfaction when I get recognition for who I am and how great I am. But in spiritual life, it's just the opposite. In his book, Nectar of Devotion, which is a translation and commentary on Rupa Goswami's Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, in chapter 3, Srila Prabhupada says, listen carefully, he says, anyone who has any desire or aspiration for satisfying his senses by becoming more and more important, either in the material sense or in the spiritual sense, cannot actually relish the really sweet taste of devotional service. Sometimes people in the West, they say, what are you guys doing coming here? We already have religion. In fact, many people, they say, we have too much religion. How many of you, how many of you grew up liking organized religion? Raise your hand. It's not the most popular thing in the world. But I can tell you this, it's better than disorganized religion. So people, they say, what's the necessity of having some other religion? We have so many religions and everybody's fighting. I remember in my family, we were Baptist Christians when I was growing up. And sometime when I was like 8 years old or something, my parents decided to switch churches and become Methodist. Now, to tell you the truth, I can't even tell you the difference between Baptists and Methodists. I don't really, but I remember my grandmother, when we switched churches, she started crying and crying, and she said, you're going to go to hell because you switched your churches like that. So people, they don't appreciate that very much. They say, what is the value of that? What's needed today is not churches and mosques and temples, but what's needed today is saintly persons. And it was for this purpose that Srila Prabhupada came to the West, and he brought Krishna consciousness. He wrote a letter to Mr. Roland Michener, yes? Okay. In 1968. And he said in that letter, he said that this Krishna consciousness movement is a non-lucrative society. It's non-sectarian, and its members include people from Hindu, Christian, and Muslim backgrounds, and they can keep their respective religions and still be a member of our society. We were speaking about this a few days ago, and I've seen this. Sometimes we go to Uzbekistan. Uzbekistan officially is a secular country. I think there's been more ISIS people come out of Uzbekistan than practically anywhere else. It's a Muslim country, but the government is secular, and Krishna consciousness is legal. There's one temple. And they've only allowed one temple. And you can only read Srila Prabhupada's books in that one temple. If you keep them in your house, it's against the law. And sometimes the police have raided devotees' homes and confiscated their books. In the temple it's okay, but outside it's not okay. So we were giving some talks there, and I was surprised to see that there's some ladies coming and they're wearing burqas. I've never seen a lady wearing a burqa coming to a Hare Krishna temple. And then I came to find out they're doing namaz, their Islamic tradition, their Islamic rituals 3 times a day, bowing down to Mecca and saying their prayers. And they were also chanting 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra on beads every day. This is a very nice example of what Srila Prabhupada was saying. Last year we were in Sweden for a festival there, and I met one young man, his name was Prahlad. And I asked him one day, how did you become interested in Krishna consciousness? And he told me a very interesting story. He said in his family, something like for 8 generations, everyone has either become a priest or a school teacher. And he was a school teacher in the government school. And I said, so how did you find out about Krishna consciousness? He said, my mother. He said, my mother, she was chanting 16 rounds and following 4 principles, and she preached to me and got me interested in Krishna consciousness. It turns out his mother is an Episcopalian priest to this day. And she, an Episcopalian priest, but she chants 16 rounds of the Hare Krishna mantra. And she is vegetarian. She offers all of her food. And she gives Mass in their churches. And when she gives her sermons, she likes to tell people about vegetarianism. And how it is that Jesus spoke about reincarnation. Some of the bishops in her church, they've chastised her. Don't do like this. But she doesn't care. So she's taken something valuable from Krishna consciousness. And this is wanted. So we understand from what Srila Prabhupada is saying here that anyone who has any desire or aspiration for satisfying his senses by becoming more and more important, either in the material sense or in the spiritual sense, cannot actually relish the really sweet taste of devotional service. So this movement is not about being a religion. Srila Prabhupada didn't want it for that. He saw there were already so many religions, and people are not going to give up their particular religion. I know some Hare Krishna devotees in Tehran, in Iran. And one of them, she's an initiated devotee, chants 16 rounds a day. And she teaches yoga. And that's how she introduces people to Krishna consciousness. But she has to be very, very careful. Because in Iran, officially the law is if you change your religion from Islam to something else, the punishment is death. She has to be very careful. So she doesn't say, she just teaches them about hatha yoga and bodily positions and like that. And that they're very nice. And she says, we have another kind of mantra yoga. It's a nice mantra. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. And she gets them to chant that. And then they're very, very nice. She says, I'm going to India in a few weeks. Would you like to come with me? And then all the stops come out. And she takes them to Vrindavan and whatever. And a number of people have become devotees there. But they're still officially Muslims. And what's the problem with that? Who cares what you call yourself? Who cares what your particular family religion is? Why should you change that? Keep that. In this movement, all that we would like people to do is to take something. In one lecture, Srila Prabhupada, he said that we don't want your money. We don't care if you become members. He said all that we want is to see people happy. And we see that people are suffering in this world. And that's the purpose of this movement. To give people something and take something. Take this mantra. Take this idea of deity worship. Take these books, Bhagavad Gita. Take the understanding of reincarnation. Take the understanding of vegetarianism, of offering your food to God. Take something. And keep whatever else you like to have. But make your life better. We'd like to make this a better world. The problem is there's so many religionists, but people follow religion for the wrong reason. Even sometimes in our own movement. People want to become big religionists and very, very famous. And sometimes, as Prabhupada says here, sometimes they do great austerities and things so that they can be famous and they can be recognized by other people. But intuitively, we don't feel happy with that. We're not satisfied with that. We're not happy with people who want lots of attention and lots of respect for themselves. We like to see people who are naturally humble. In Jagannath Puri, we've been putting on a festival retreat every year for the last 12 years, I think now. And we've been doing it the last 8 years or so at one Catholic retreat center called Ishopanti Ashram, the place which is the gateway to the pathway to God, Ishopanti. And there's an interesting history of the place, the property, right across the street from it. It's owned by the Chaitanya Gaudiya Mutt. And there's a couple of old buildings there which haven't been used in many, many years. What is the history of that place? It's interesting. There's a temple in Jagannath Puri called the Lokanath Mahadev Temple. It's a Shiva temple. And that's the place where all the lepers, people with leprosy, traditionally they go and they beg there. And they're suffering very badly. So the Gaudiya Mutt temple, they were helping those lepers, giving them food, giving them clothing and different things. But there was a controversy. You see, some of the lepers were saying, I'm a Brahmin leper. I'm born in a high-class family, and this fellow, he's a Sudra leper. I'm not going to eat with him. You should give me some special position, because I'm a Brahmin leper. So that's the history of that property across from Ishopanti Ashram. They purchased it so they could have a place for the Brahmin lepers, because they're better. This is the nature of the material world. Even you have leprosy, a very hideous disease, your face is disfigured and socially an outcast, but still, you want respect for something. You want to be distinguished from other lesser people for this reason or that reason. Mm-hmm. There's a nice story in this regard that from the Mahabharata, that Dronacharya, who was the teacher, the guru of the Pandavas and the Kauravas, on one occasion, Dronacharya, he called for Yudhishthira. And he said, Yudhishthira, I've been teaching you for so long. Now it's time, I want some Guru Dakshina. You should give some payment. This is traditional Vedic culture. The teachers are not paid. Rather, the students, it's understood, they'll give some gift at some time, according to how inspired they are by that teacher. And this keeps purity in the teaching. And in Vedic culture, people weren't enamored by particular institutions like we have today, Harvard or Yale, Stanford, this or that. But people were looking out for good teachers, people who had good character. And so Dronacharya, he'd been teaching the Pandavas. And so he called for Yudhishthira. Yudhishthira, now I want you to give me some Guru Dakshina. Yes, Guru Maharaj. What do you want? He said, Yudhishthira, I want you to go out and just find one person and bring them to me. One person who's lower than you in all ways. Yudhishthira said, yes, Guru Maharaj. He left. And then Dronacharya called for another student whose name was Duryodhan. Duryodhan, come here. I want some Guru Dakshina. I want you to go out and just find one person, just one person who's better than you. Yes, Guru Maharaj. Both of them were gone for a very long time. And finally Yudhishthira returned, and Yudhishthira looked very depressed. And he said, Guru Maharaj, I'm very sorry. But I went everywhere, all over the world. I looked everywhere. I couldn't find anyone who's lower than me in every regard. And then at that time, suddenly, Duryodhan came in. Duryodhan looked very annoyed. He said, Guru Maharaj, you gave me such a hard job. I went all over the world looking for even one person better than me. I couldn't find anybody. And Dronacharya, then he turned to Yudhishthira and he said, Yudhishthira, your search is over. Here's someone lower than you. And he pointed to Duryodhan. And he said, and Duryodhan, your search is also over. Here's someone more elevated than you, Yudhishthira. So spiritual life means that platform where we don't want respect, where we give all respect to others. And there's a great tradition of that in Vaishnavism. There's another nice song that comes to my mind that a great Acharya named Bhaktivinoda Thakur wrote. Hari Hey Garita Chare Rohilama Moji Nakori Sadhu Sangha Bolo. Hey, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama. Loi Sadhu Besha Ani Upadeshi Eboro Mayara Ranga Bolo. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama. This is confession. In the Catholic tradition, there's this tradition of confession. It's also a tradition in Gaudiya Vaishnavism. We call it prarthana, or revealing our heart, being honest and pouring out our heart. So I like this very much because it describes, this song describes what's going on here today. He sings Garita Achari Rohi Lama Moji Nakorino Sadhu Sangha. He said, look at me, here I am, such a nonsense person. I've done all bad things. Achar means behavior. Sadachar means good behavior. He says Garita Achari means my behavior. They make scary movies about my behavior. Garita Achari Rohi Lama Nakorino Sadhu Sangha. I never really associated with saintly persons. Just, I had my picture taken with them sometimes. Nakorino Sadhu Sangha. But what's going on? Loi Sadhu Vesh. Here I am, dressed like a saintly person. Got a garland on. Somebody thinks, Loi Sadhu Vesh, Ani Upadesh. And I'm giving instructions to everyone. He says, Ebodo Maya Ranga. This is Maya's big joke. This is the nature of Vaishnavas. And this is the nature of real spiritual life. In material life, we think we're going to get satisfaction and happiness by being more and more famous, by more and more, having a more and more position. But in spiritual life, it's just the opposite. The understanding is that the more you're insignificant, the more happiness there is. And therefore, we titled this discussion tonight, that the ecstasy of insignificance, just the opposite of material consciousness. In material consciousness, everybody thinks, I'm going to be happy if I finally get respect. If everybody knows how great I am. But you never really get that happiness because it's a dog-eat-dog world. And when you want to get respect, you find there's 100 other people who want it just as bad as you. And they're trying to tear you down. And then there's nasty politics and dealings, and it breaks your heart. And it causes so much unhappiness. We want happiness. We want blissfulness. But our pursuit of fame and prestige gives us just the opposite result. Whereas in spiritual life, the more someone becomes very humble and very quiet, the more they can taste the ecstasy of spiritual life, the ecstasy of insignificance. And there are some different examples of this. I'd like to read you something. This is from the teachings of St. Francis of Assisi, another tradition. Listen to what he says. Blessed is the servant who does not consider himself any better when he is praised and exalted by people than when he is considered worthless, simple, and looked down upon. For what a person is before God, that he is, and no more. Woe to that religious person who has been placed in a high position by others and who does not want to come down by his own will. Blessed is that servant who is not placed in a high position by his own will and always desires to be under the feet of others. There's another nice example in the Catholic tradition also of one Italian saint, another Italian saint, named Saint Gemma. Saint Gemma, she passed away, I think, at the age of 24, 25, very young lady, but from a very early age, she's a very extraordinary person. She wasn't interested in material life. She really wanted to dedicate herself to spiritual life. And this is what the world needs today. We need saints. No one's interested in becoming a saint anymore. People want to study business so they can make some money. They want to become famous by becoming a movie star, an actress. Nobody wants to become a devotee of God. So she was very attracted to things that would humble her, because she understood that the more that I can humble myself, the more I can give up my false pride and false position, then the more happy I'll be. So one day, her spiritual director, his name was Father Germanus, he decided to test her humility. And so he asked her, what kind of prayers are you offering? And Gemma, she said something. And this Father Germanus, he shook his head and he said, why would Jesus want to dirty himself with a cesspit, the cesspool that is Gemma? Do you know what a cesspool is, everybody? If you have a farm and you have a toilet where you dig a hole, that's all the nasty things that go in there. When Gemma heard that, a big smile came on her face. Yes, this is what I've been looking for. And after that time, always when she would offer her prayers to the Lord, she would address herself as the cesspit Gemma. Very nice thing. So you got happiness in this way. This is the happiness of insignificance. But the problem in this world is people become proud over the slightest things. I've swallowed more worms than anybody else. Right? Put my name in the book. In the Mahabharata, there's an interesting story. There was one crow. In Vedic culture, crow, in Orissa where I live, they call them kaka, because that's the sound they make. Ka, 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 right? Call them a kaka. And this crow, he was going to the house of one wealthy man. This wealthy man had 2 small children. And the small children, every day, they were feeding the crow. And they were giving him ice cream and different sweets, and paneer, cheese, different things. And the crow started getting fat. And the crow started thinking, I'm Pucky Raj. I'm the best of all the birds. There's no bird that's as fat as I am. He started thinking, I'm better than all the other birds because he's eating so much of the sweets and things. One day, 2 Rajahangsa swans came flying by. A Rajahangsa swan, their wingspread is maybe more than the width of my arms. So wide. Very, very beautiful, majestic birds. They can fly for hundreds of miles without stopping. And so when those 2 Rajahangsa swans came flying overhead, that crow became envious. Naranja Maharaj was speaking nicely this morning about the pitfall of envy and how detrimental envy is. If we want to actually practice spiritual life, we have to give that up. So this crow, he becomes so proud. And when he saw someone who surpassed him, he became envious, and he became very envious when he saw all the other birds were in awe and giving respect of these Rajahangsa swans. And that fat little crow, he challenged those Rajahangsa swans. Ah, who do you think you are? This is my territory. I'm Pucky Raj here. I'm the king of the birds, and I challenge you to a competition of flight. Everyone's giving so much respect to you, but you don't know I'm the best of the birds. We'll have a competition, and we'll see who's the best. The 2 Rajahangsa swans, they looked at each other. Who is this idiot over here? And then the crow said, I'll show you. And that crow flew into the air, and he started flying sideways. And then he went upside down. And all the other crows are going, caw, 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 caw. Go, brother crow. They were cheering him on. Two Rajahangsa swans, they looked at each other and said, these people are crazy. Let's get out of here. And they just started flying away. And that proud crow started flying after them. Hey, you can't get away from me. You're scared of me, aren't you? I know it. And he started flying after them. Those two Rajahangsa swans started flying out over the ocean. And they went quite a long distance. They went so far, you couldn't see the land anymore. They can fly for hundreds and hundreds of miles. And that crow, he'd never gone that far before. And he started getting very nervous. And after a little while, he started getting tired. And he started flying lower and lower. And then he became really, really afraid. Because you could see he's going to fall into the water. And he knew there's sharks and different aquatic animals which would eat him. And so the crow, he started falling in the water, hitting the water. And then that crow, he started calling out for those Rajahangsa swans. Please help me, save me, save me. The swans turned around, and one of them flew down and picked that poor crow up. He was nearly dead. He was soaking wet. His feathers were all disarrayed. That swan put him on his back and carried him back to the land. So the story is an allegory, a wisdom story, that people who eat a lot, eat a lot of prestige, or like to eat a lot of food, rich, opulent things, they tend to become proud. And then they think they're the best, and they start becoming envious of other persons, including saintly persons, like the Paramahamsas, or saintly swan-like persons. And they try to challenge them. But if we try to behave like that, if we try to imitate those Paramahamsas, those saintly persons, then what will happen? We'll fall into the ocean of birth and death, and we'll die. But if somehow, by good fortune, if we're drowning in that ocean of birth and death, and a little good intelligence comes to us, and a little bit of humility comes, and we can call out, help me, I'm dying, please help me. That's the beginning of our spiritual life. When we understand how insignificant that we are. This is also called happiness through reality. Reality is not a very popular concept with a lot of people. But I'll tell you something. Illusion, no matter how cheerful it may be, is always preferable to, reality, no matter how depressing it is always preferable to illusion, no matter how cheerful that may seem to be. We should live in reality. But it's not always a very popular thing to be in reality. There was one devotee who later took shelter of Srila Prabhupada. His name was Stamba. A very, very intelligent, educated person. And I heard a story from him once that before he came to the Krishna consciousness movement, he was in the university, he was a student. He'd never met the devotees or anything, didn't know anything about Krishna consciousness, but he was starting to ask questions in his life. And one day he was invited to a university party. And he went there, and it's like many of the parties, the boys and the girls talking and drinking and smoking and like that. And somehow, he couldn't understand, but he was feeling depressed. He didn't feel like he fit in with everybody else. And so he was sitting off by himself in the corner. And after a while, a young, pretty girl came over to him and she said, "Hi, what's your name? What are you doing?" And she started talking to him about, I don't know, the important things that young college girls talk about. The different types of dress you wear, and movies, and music, or something like that. And Stamba was just quiet. And she went on for some time, and then in their conversation, it was time for him to say something. So he turned to her, and with sincerity, he asked her, he said, "Have you ever thought about death?" And her eyes became very big. She said, "You can't talk like that here. You'll spoil the whole party." We can't talk about this. Don't talk about death. This is a reality. It's a reality that happens to people. Depression is a reality that happens to people. Suicide is a reality that happens to people. So far as I understand, every single person on this planet is going to get old. There's nobody who's overcome that yet. And I can tell you now, I'll be hitting 60 in a couple years, and it's not so much fun even at this point. Old age is not so beautiful. Paul McCartney was singing, "Will you still love me when I'm 64? And my body's old and rotten. I may have to go to the bathroom every 5 minutes. Will you still love me?" At that time. This is reality. But our civilization, we don't live in reality. That we have all these beautiful girls and the posters and commercials and things. And most of those beautiful ladies, their faces have been touched up in Photoshop. Because there's a little blemish, there's a little something, maybe a little too much fat, a little too much this or that, and cut that down. Even those young beautiful girls, they do some Photoshop with them. And what to speak, how many posters do you see of a 70-year-old lady who's big and fat? How many pictures do you see of that? We don't see that. But that's reality. That's the world that we live in. We don't live in reality. We live in an illusion. I like to tell people that Facebook is a delusion inside of an illusion. The material world is an illusion, and Facebook is a delusion inside of that. We saw a cartoon the other day that there was a little girl, and she's sitting in a swing. And there's an empty swing next to her. And she's talking to the empty swing. And she says, "My mother also has imaginary friends on Facebook." What kind of friendship is that? What kind of world is that? It's a delusion. This world is an illusion. That's a delusion inside of an illusion. But that's where people are living. More and more, we don't even see each other. We don't even talk with each other. We say there should be happiness through reality. Understanding reality, what it is, there can be some happiness. But people don't want to live in reality. They want to live in a fantasy land, and they can't face their own shortcomings. It's very common today. They say that the majority of murders and violent crime take place in the home. Between the husband and the wife, or between the boyfriend and the girlfriend, the children and the parents, between loving relatives. And why is that? Because there's so many expectations there. And when you don't meet my expectation, then I become very, very angry. And people suffer so badly because this is our greatest hope. A young man marries a young girl, but it didn't work out. And she told him, "Anyway, we can still be friends. But I like this other fellow better." And she leaves him, and he cries. But then there's another girl. But it also doesn't work out. And sometimes it happens 6 or 7 times in a row. So many girls have left him, but still he's looking. This girl over here is very pretty. Maybe this one will be different. Maybe this one will give me the happiness that I'm looking for. But it's not reality. We can offer love in this world on 3 different bases. In Sanskrit, this is known as Deha Priti, Sukshma Priti, and Atma Priti. Deha means the stool Deha. We say in Bengali, Stula Deha, which means the physical body. And some people, they just love her body. She's so beautiful, and baby, I love you, honey. Right? But if someone throws acid on her face, where's the love anymore? How deep is that love? It's 1/16 of an inch deep. That's how thick your skin is. You can save yourself a lot of money on chocolates and movie tickets. Just take her to the beach in the summertime during a hot summer day, and when she gets a sunburn, and later when the skin peels off, collect it in a plastic bag. And you can keep it with you, and you can rub your sweetheart anytime you like. Isn't that gross? Isn't this the kind of madness that people are involved in? And this is the main type of love, to put it in quotation marks, that goes on in the world. And this is why there's so much violence. Better than than deha priti is sukshma priti, something subtle. Baby, I love you because you like chess. And we both like the Ramones. We both like the same kind of music, right? But the problem with that kind of love also, it's also not satisfying. And sometimes it's also exploitive. Someone wants to, a girl wants this boy because he's the lead guitar player in the band. Or he looks very cool, or she looks very cool. And but then later on they meet someone who's more cool than him, who appeals to their mind even more. And so they leave that person, and then one or both of them cry. So in both the relationships of deha priti and sukshma priti, love which is based on the body, bodily attraction, love which is based on the mind and mutual interests, there's no satisfaction. And there's so much of the time there's exploitation, and there's a cessation. It has an ending. She writes you a Dear John letter. It's been good. I just want you to know I appreciate you very much, and we can always be friends. Like that, and his heart's broken. So devotees, Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we want to turn to Atma Priti, love which is based on the spirit soul. Love is defined in the Srimad Bhagavatam as having two qualities which give rise to a third. Ahoitaki apratiyata yagyatma suprasidati. Real love has no motivation. It's not that he loves you because, wow, you're hot. And then a few too many pizzas and Coca-Colas later, you become a lot bigger. He doesn't love you anymore. And he wants to get a new model, because that's the nature of our society. I got a new cell phone recently. How long do you keep a cell phone for? Can someone tell me? Has anybody had a cell phone for 20 years? I don't think it's been around that long. Do you expect that when you buy a cell phone, I'm going to keep this for the rest of my life? No? What do you think? I'm going to have this for 3 years? 5 years is like outrageous, right? It's like an antique or something then, huh? Do you know what is the number one product that's created in the world today? Can anyone tell me? No. What? Someone says cars. No. Some people say makeup. No. You know, the number, and you won't quarrel with me when I tell you this, and you can look it up and see the statistics. The number one product created in the world today is garbage. And we're drowning ourselves in garbage. In fact, we live in a garbage culture. A culture where you go, if you're traveling, you want to eat something, you buy a barbecue set from Taiwan. And you buy it, and it's cheap. And you understand the thing is maybe it's only going to work 3 or 4 times. You buy it, they call that planned obsolescence. You buy the thing with the understanding that it's going to be garbage. And similarly, everything that we buy today, marketers are very smart in this way. It's not like when my parents were young, they bought a Morris Minor car, and they bought that car with the idea we're going to have this car for our whole life. And they could make cars like that. But they don't, because then there won't be any market. Then they won't be able to continue making profits. So they have to they planned obsolescence. So it's a garbage culture. Everything that we buy is garbage, and our relationships also become garbage. We have Facebook friends, and our marriage relationships, well, she's hot, she's beautiful, I'd love to marry her. And then a few pizzas later, some ice cream and things, and she becomes big and fat. Then I throw her away, and I get a new one. Because it's a garbage culture. That's the way we do things. But in such a culture, there's no happiness. Happiness comes when we understand our true position. Happiness comes through reality. Misery comes when we try to be the big, big person. How long are we going to be in this world? How long can I go on putting on a show before people find out who I really am? I remember seeing a bumper sticker once that said, I like this, it said that old age and treachery will always overcome youth and skill. I think it was an old man who had the car. It's the nature of envy. We want to be a big, big person, and we become envious when younger persons are there, more qualified persons are there. We can't tolerate that. So, saintly persons, by their nature, they find happiness in insignificance. They find happiness in rendering humble service to God. And therefore it's said that Trinata Pisa Nichena, Tororeva Sahistrana Amanina Manadena, Kirtaniya Sadahari, that we should be as tolerant as a tree, consider ourselves as low as the grass on the street, and be always ready to give all respect to others and not demand any respect for ourselves. There's an interesting quality of the grass. If you look at the grass, you don't notice any individual pieces of grass. It's not like one piece of grass stands up and says, I'm better than all the other grass. Right? But grass works together. Grass is also very individual, but you have to look at it very carefully to find that individuality. And one commentary on this verse is described that this is a nature of a saintly person. They don't want to push themselves forward, but they get happiness by giving happiness to others, by being a team member, by bringing happiness to God, who is the source of everything. That's the source of real happiness. Letting Him have His position. Let God be God. And let me be insignificant. But in that insignificance, there's great, great happiness. Great ecstasy there. There's another story I can tell you. There was one wealthy man who was living in Kolkata. And he became old and he decided that he would retire from material life. He got his children married, Indian custom. And he went to the place known as Radhakund in Vrindavan. And he was staying there, and he met one sadhu. And this wealthy man was very attracted by this sadhu. And he decided, I want to take shelter of him. I want him as my guide. I want him as my guru. And so he approached him. And this wealthy man was very proud. He came from a very aristocratic family. He was very educated and very, very wealthy. So he went to that sadhu. He said, Maharaj, please accept me as your disciple. Please be my guru. But that sadhu, he could see this fellow is proud. He's not actually qualified for spiritual life. And so he made some excuse. No, I can't do that. And again, that wealthy man kept approaching him. And finally the sadhu said, okay, I'll give you initiation. But there's a condition. Oh, Maharaj, what is it? Please tell me, what is it? I want you to go out, very similar to the story I just told you about Dronacharya. I want you to go out and just find one living entity who's lower than you in every respect. Yes, Guru Maharaj, thank you so much. Very easy to do. I come from a very educated family. I'm very wealthy. I come from a very aristocratic family. I'm very handsome, and I'm also very humble. It won't be very hard to find someone who's lower than me. And so he went out of the ashram, and the first person he saw was a rickshawala riding people. The rickshawala can't even write his own name. Low-class person. He thought, that's it, right away. Found somebody. But then he thought, wait a minute. This rickshawala, he was born here in the holy Dham of Radhakund. And he does service For all the Vaishnavas, all the saintly persons, actually he's better than me in some ways. I should look for someone else. And then he saw a Bungi. If you want to get in a fight with someone from India, remember that word. Go and call someone a Bungi. It's like a very bad word. Because a Bungi is someone, he's like the lowest caste person. A Bungi is someone who cleans the streets. And in India, it's not like the streets of Ottawa. There's stool and urine and dead animals and different things. Very smelly. And that kind of occupation is considered very, very low class, very disgusting. So he thought, he's a Bungi. He is lower than me. But then he thought, wait a minute. This Bungi, he's also born in the holy Dham. And moreover, he's serving the dust of the Dham, and his body's covered with the dust, the sacred dust from the sacred place. He's also better than me in some ways. Maybe this is going to be harder than I thought. So that sadhu had given him 1 week. He went for 1 week, searching. He couldn't find anyone who was actually lower than him in all regards. Finally, the last day came, that morning. And that morning he went to a field to answer the call of nature. And he did his business. And when he finished doing his business, he saw a worm start climbing into his remains that he'd left behind there. He thought, thank you, Krishna. Finally, I found one creature who's actually lower than me in every regard. This worm and stool. But then he thought, wait a minute. Actually, the worm's better than me also. Because you see, I eat this nice prasadam. Always, right? And after I finish the prasadam, what happens to it? It becomes something so disgusting I don't want to talk about it here. But this worm, he has a good quality. He takes that disgusting thing that I leave behind and he transforms it into earth. To something very useful. He has a quality, a good quality that I don't have. So he went back to that sadhu. He said, Maharaj, I'm very sorry. I failed. I couldn't find anyone who was lower than me. And the sadhu looked at him and smiled. He said, now you're ready for initiation. Now I'll give it. Because now he's living in reality. Everyone else is living in illusion, wanting to be a big person. Big person. Srila Prabhupada, he used to quote a poem, sometime an English poem, which is based on the Ramayana, about when the Hanuman and some of the monkeys had gone to Cape Comorin, and they were talking about jumping to Lanka. It's a long ways. And they were all speaking, I think I could jump there, one of them said, but I wouldn't be able to make it back. Another one said, maybe I could make it halfway back, but I couldn't make it. And so the poem goes, big monkey, big belly, Ceylon jumping, melancholy. So there are so many big monkeys are there with big bellies, they're big persons. But when Hanuman, Ceylon jumping, he jumped to Ceylon, to Lanka, melancholy. They all became very depressed. This is the nature of false pride. There's a nice description, a verse from a book called the Manava Dharma Shastra, which is quoted by Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. It says, Samana Brahmano Nityam Udijed Vishad Eva Amrita Sheva Chak Chanched Avamanasya Sarvada Sukam Hyavamata Sete Sukam Cha Pratibudhyate Sukam Charati Loke Smin Avamanta Vinashyati. Throughout his life, someone who's a transcendentalist or Brahmin should consider material prestige to be like poison. And they should consider dishonor to be like nectar. After all, if one learns to tolerate dishonor, then his agitation will subside and he'll be able to happily sleep. Happily wake and happily move about. The person who insults him will, as a result of his sin, become embarrassed, and his happiness and this and his next life will be vanquished. So many people today that we sell mountains, Himalayan mountains, of sleeping pills to people because there's so much in anxiety. There's a question they asked, I saw in America once, if you have a friend who's a very, very wealthy man, and you want to buy a present for him, a birthday gift, what do you buy for the man who has everything? And the answer is, you buy him a burglar alarm. Because he has everything. So he's going to be in so much anxiety, he needs a burglar alarm. And they find that people who have everything, they don't have one simple thing. Generally, they don't have peace of mind. Because they're living in illusion. They're trying to artificially be like God. They're trying to artificially be a big, big person. And their anxiety knows no limits. They're always in completely distress. So they can't sleep. They can't be a peaceful person. But I've met in India sometimes rickshawallahs, very poor people, but very, very blissful, very, very simple. And at least traditionally, unfortunately times are changing, but at least traditionally, 20, 25 years ago, when I first went to India, and we go to the villages, I said people had some wisdom in the villages. Many times they weren't very educated, but they had wisdom. And they knew the difference between themselves and their body. In Bengali language, there's a simple, if you say in English, I'm sick, I am sick. How do we say that in Bengali? Amar sharir ashuk. Literally speaking, Amar means mine, doesn't mean me. Amar sharir, my body, is ashuk. Ashuk means unhappy. It has a problem. And sometimes they say karap. Amar sharir karap. My body. So the simplest persons, intuitively in their language, there's this understanding, there's a difference between themselves and their body. So what's the value of a big, big education, big, big prestige in life, if you don't understand who we are? And if we don't understand who we are, how can we be happy in life? How can we be peaceful? Rather, as we were saying a few days ago, we go and we purchase our identity off the rack in the department store. And we decide, I'm going to be a sexy, beautiful girl. I'm going to buy a very small bikini. I'm going to buy a sleeveless shirt that shows off so much of my body. I'm going to attract it because this is who I am. And then later on, maybe they decide, no, I want to be more like a bookworm lady. And I'll buy a long dress. Or maybe now my boyfriend is a biker. So I'm going to buy leather pants and a leather vest. And they buy their identity off the rack. But they don't really know who they are. How can we have happiness if we don't know who we are? People don't want to understand who we are because they don't want to face reality. And reality is we're all very, very, very insignificant. Just in this one city block, there must be what? Thousands of people living in this area. Each person's thinking, I'm the most important person. Each person's not aware of everyone else. I remember when I was in school as a young boy, we had one teacher, he gave us an exercise. We went outside, this was in the spring or summertime, and they had us take 1 square foot of ground, and we just dug there, and we had to count how many living entities we could find in that 1 square foot of space. You couldn't count all of them. There's so many little worms, little insects and ants, and what to speak of germs and different things. But we're thinking we're so significant, even in this one city block, and what to speak of the whole city of Ottawa, what to speak of the whole country of Canada, what to speak of North America, what to speak of this planet, what to speak of this universe. But still, everyone is going with this illusion that I'm an important person and thinking I'm going to find happiness and bliss by getting everyone else to respect me. The spiritual life means that we learn the ecstasy of insignificance. We learn the art of happiness through reality. And this is something this Krishna conscious movement wants to share with other people. And we don't care what religion people have. We don't care if they become a member, if they give money. We have many projects we'd like to continue We need money for that. But Srila Prabhupada in one lecture, he said, we don't need your money. We depend on Krishna. Krishna sends money. Krishna may inspire someone to give something. And it's good for that person to help something. But we don't depend on other people. We depend on Krishna. And Krishna will take care. Because a devotee should understand his position and not demand respect from everyone else, not wanting everything else from everyone, not wanting some recognition. One of the greatest drawbacks in spiritual life is this attitude of entitlement. And I'd like to speak something more about this. Tomorrow we're going to have a special discussion, and we're going to speak about two different devotees. One devotee who's known as Devaraj, which means the king of gods. Life's good. And his name is Indra. And another devotee who for a long time wasn't so famous. In fact, he's considered to be kind of like a pile of rocks. And his name was Govardhan. And they're both great devotees. But the problem with Indra was that he wanted some respect from everyone. He wanted some position. We wrote something about this in our magazine. Right here. Oops. Krishna Kun asked me to say something about our magazine. We're going to give some talk about this tomorrow. About lessons in community development. In the pastime of Govardhan Leela. Very famous pastime when Krishna, as a small boy, 7-year-old boy, picked up this giant mountain and defied the king of demigods, the king of the gods, Indra. To show that if we really want to be a transcendentalist, if we want to practice spiritual life, we should give respect to everyone. We should bow our head down and not demand respect. So these are some lessons that we get from this verse and purport in the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita contains so much wisdom which can help us and which can help the world. The Bhagavad Gita doesn't really belong to any religion. The Bhagavad Gita belongs to Krishna. It belongs to God. And so it means it belongs to all of his children. And Henry David Thoreau, so many great thinkers, Emerson and others, they turned to the Gita. Gandhi, so many different personalities have turned to the Gita and taken shelter of its words of wisdom. Very practical things, such as teaching us what is the happiness, the ecstasy of insignificance. So I'll stop there. Maybe there's some discussion, some reflections from people. Lakshminath Prabhu? I think he was first.
In Canada, they did a scientific study to find out what is happiness and who are the people in Canada the most happy. And they discovered that all of Canada, the maritime provinces, which are the poorest province in Canada, they're the people who are the most happy. Not people in Toronto, not people in Montreal, the big cities, Vancouver, but people living in the Maritimes. And they also discovered that two things, what made them happy was religion and family.
Very nice. I saw there's somebody who wrote a book about people who won the lottery in America. And they went and interviewed him. There's one fellow who won like a few $1 million. And he was so happy. When he won the money, he was crying and happy. They went to see him a few years later and they asked him, so what's your experience? And the man said, it's the worst thing that ever happened in my life. He said, my home was broken into like 14 times. People trying to steal money. All of a sudden I had a stream of people outside my door all times of day and night knocking. Hey George, remember me? We were friends in 4th grade together. We were 6 years old. Can I borrow some money from you, you know? And he said, my wife left me. She divorced me and took so much money. And my daughter that I loved so much, she became a drug addict. She got pregnant before she was married. My life is completely miserable. He said, I wish I never would have won that money. But we think the money is going to give me happiness. But very, very nice comment. Thank you. That real happiness is amongst people who are poor. Gopalananda Prabhu?
Very, very good theme, so nicely. Because this obsession or delusion, trying to become someone and be recognized as that, actually, if you look at the more famous people in the world, fame is a very hard thing to handle. it's really treacherous. In other words, it only belongs to God. Only God deserves to be famous.
Only He can digest it.
Yeah, exactly. Because you see the Michael Jacksons and Madonnas and all sorts of people. Everyone knows them, but now they're like total basket cases. Like, you know, their egos are so warped because they know they're not that good, but they're worshipped by millions, and they also try and catch up with everyone's expectations, and they carry on like ridiculously, you know, ostentatious. And their whole life becomes weird and warped and unnatural, and they're totally miserable because they became famous. So it's a curse to become too famous. You know? Whereas Prabhupada, he never wanted to become famous, but he will become more famous than Jesus or as the greatest benefactor of mankind. But that was not his purpose at all. He wanted to see Krishna become famous. Yeah? So it's like fame is a very hard thing to handle unless you're God.
So many people want to become famous, but how many people just want to know who they are? And to become centered, to become balanced. And who we are is okay. Even we may be very fallen, very, very low. That's okay. That's who I am. And let me use that and let me cry out to God. Like the story of the crow. He was a proud, fat crow. But finally when he accepted his position, that I'm suffering, I can't solve my problems, I'm going to die. And then he used that. He identified with that. And he called out. Gaura Prabhu, you had something?
Yeah, a few points. First of all, I want to know that 17th chapter you're reading from, or?
Yes.
Okay. I was wondering which verse it was.
I'll find it in just a second.
17, 18.
17, 18?
Thank you.
Yeah, 17, 18.
Yeah, a few points. Yeah, I want to build on what Lakshmanath Prabhu had to say. It's one YouTube I saw where they were asking, what do you think is the cause of heroin addiction? Opium addiction or heroin addiction?
You guys are really depressing, you know. You're going to spoil the whole party talking like this. I can feel the story coming.
And the narrator said, you'd probably say heroin. They'd say, no, it's not, because when all the military people who were addicted to heroin returned back to their families, their loved ones, then 95% of them gave up their addiction. So the conclusion was the opposite of addiction is connection. When we have a sense, and I think that's in Maslow's pyramid, you know, a sense of belonging, a sense that I fit in, that I'm of some value to others. Service. Pardon?
Others care for them.
Others care for me.
I care for them.
Yeah, that's why Prabhupada said if someone leaves, it's 50% our fault, so we can consider like that. Also, about handling fame, yeah, I remember Mahatma Prabhu wrote a letter to Prabhupada saying, Prabhupada, you know, I see a lot of these rock and roll musicians, you know, they're able to, they're really able to influence the masses. So I thought, you know, if I create a rock and roll band for Krishna, you know, I get famous for Krishna, then, you know, that will really help your movement. And Prabhupada's response to him was something like, along the lines of, in the beginning you may be thinking, I want to become famous for Krishna, but the tendency will be that the for Krishna part will be forgotten. And it will just be, I want to become famous. And you become deluded by your own, aspiration. Actually an expression of envy of Krishna. And at the very beginning of your talk, you were talking about, people's need for respect. And I was thinking there was Kavi Chandra Swami, because sometimes he's in touch with me on Facebook, and we sometimes see different Facebook wars ensuing, and often devotees express the desire for respect, maybe not so blatantly, but you can kind of sense that people are craving to be respected, or that they didn't get the respect. So he brought to my attention one comedian named Rodney Dangerfield, and he developed a whole shtick around, I can't get no respect.
I get no respect.
And then he tells a whole bunch of jokes.
That was always his line.
I'm so disrespected, and I can't remember the jokes, but people treat me like this, or my wife treats me like that. And people were laughing their heads off, and I was thinking, wow, this is really a very common
Yeah,
Something that's very relevant.
something is funny because it's real.
Yeah.
You know, it's like when we tell this little joke about the girl talking to the swing next to her. Yeah, my mommy also has imaginary friends and something called Facebook.
Right.
That's funny because there's some reality there. So Rodney Dangerfield was funny. He was always saying, I get no respect. Nobody gives me no respect. That's funny because we all want respect.
And then I watched that further and I thought, what is it that everyone feels that way? And I thought, maybe it's because, you know, the majority of us haven't learned how to respect ourselves. And because we're not giving respect to ourselves. By that I mean making our connection with Krishna our priorities in life. Then therefore we're not feeling loved, we're not feeling respected because we're not getting the reciprocation from Krishna because we're not absorbed in consciousness of serving Krishna and his devotees. So people are feeling needy because they're not, there's a void, there's a gap in their life because they're not functioning on sattva guna or shuddha sattva.
They're not connected with the absolute.
Right.
According to our by our nature, we're all meant to be connected and be servants of God, and we feel satisfaction with that. Yeah. Thank you. Anything else from anybody? Any thoughts, reflections, discussion? Would you?
Because you've focused a lot on speaking about focus on reality opposed to illusion. Do you have any pointers or tips on how to bring ourselves back to the reality? Because even though a lot of us are trying to live a concentrated spiritual life and see all of our actions connected in a spiritual way, it's easy to get caught up in the day-to-day and not always be as conscious of the reality.
Yeah, our nature in the material world is to be so self-centered. I think we're the most important, and I'm just the most handsome guy there is, and all the girls just faint when they see me. And then we join the Hare Krishna movement, and then we think, we get rid of that false ego, but then we think, I'm practically a pure devotee. I'm just such an advanced person. I'm a great transcendentalist. And it's another kind of illusion, another kind of fantasy that we're living in. And when we live in that kind of fantasy, it's very, very detrimental for our spiritual life, because then we can't call out from our heart. We can't hear the voice of our soul. Just like we give the example, if someone's living in a very busy part of Ottawa, and maybe there's a river going through the city somewhere, some
One, just three.
What's it called?
The Rideau River.
Riga?
Yeah.
Rideau.
Yeah.
The Rideau River. So maybe you're living right on the bank of the Rideau River, but because of all the buses and cars and trains and noise and things, you can't hear the sound of the water. But at night, when everybody turns off all their TV sets and the radios are not blasting and the cars are not running and the buses are not there, then you can hear the sound of the Rideau River. So in the same way, we can't hear the voice of our soul because the volume is turned up too much, like in Alice in Wonderland. Eat me, drink this, look at this, do this. The volume is so loud, we're wanting so many things. So we need to turn the volume down. And that happens when we live in reality. So if our life is in a party is a perfect example of an illusion. Everyone's thinking, I'm having such a good time tonight. And he goes upstairs with a girl and he gets some incurable sex disease. And he becomes drunk, he kills some brain cells, and he's vomiting all over, and the next morning he has a terrible hangover. This is fun. This is so nice. It's not nice at all. It's an illusion. But because we're intoxicated by the beauty of this young girl, and we're intoxicated by some alcohol and different things, and the music is blaring, we're thinking life is just fine. But we're not living in reality. So we need to find someone like Stamba in the story who's going to ask us this question. Have you ever thought about death? He's going to spoil the whole party. And that happens sometimes even in our own movement. If we start thinking that, let's just collect a lot of money and it'll be very good, and don't ask that kind of question, and we become repressive with people, then we can also be an illusion here too. So we want to associate with saintly persons who are living in reality. It's not easy. Bhaktivinoda Thakur says there are two types of persons in this world, the Bahirmukjanas and Antarmukjanas. External people and internal people. And according to the association that we keep, we'll become like that. So we want to associate with saintly persons, and we can do that by coming to the temple, associating with devotees. And if we don't have that opportunity, we can listen to lectures of Srila Prabhupada, we can read the books, and associate with someone who's living in reality. And he speaks very harsh words. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, in one lecture, he said that this is the nature of a sadhu. The sadhu is that person, he said, who makes us pour out our heart and reveal things in our heart we wouldn't tell anyone else. And then the sadhu, he takes our heart and he puts it on the sacrificial block. And he takes a knife in the form of unpleasant language. And he cuts. Oh. And he chastises us. What are you doing in nonsense? You think this is so good? You think you're enjoying life? You're going to die. You're going to die. Everyone else is dying around you. Live in reality. And it breaks up our party. And the very word sadhu means someone who cuts. So we want to associate with persons like that. That would be my thought. You want to add something, Lakshmanath Prabhu?
One of the first devotees I met on parts where I was working with the government for my head, carrying some things.
Here in Ottawa?
Yeah. So Balakrishna saw me. He said, you seem to have a lot of books of knowledge there or something. I said, well, what's the difference between reality and illusion? That was his question.
What's the difference between reality and illusion?
What?
I didn't think that at school.
Gaur Prabhu.
Madhavananda Prabhu and I drove down to State College to go visit Stamba Prabhu in around 1980 or somewhere in there, because we were hearing about the amazing results of his consciousness and cooking course, which Ravana Swami also developed cooking courses in Athens.
That was what he called it, consciousness and cooking?
Consciousness and cooking.
Wow.
Or cooking and consciousness. And I also did the same thing at the University of Toronto. You know, the protein myth, and then vegetarianism and economics, vegetarianism and the environment, vegetarianism and the world's rule and morality, world's rule, and then finally bringing it to Krishnatarianism, Prasadam-arianism. Anyway, it was very impressive. He had a room something like this size, all filled with university students. All university, and he was constantly quoting the great philosophers of.
He's very learned.
Mixing it in with Sariputta, Bhaktivedanta Institute, scientific, preaching, and I mean, he was quite a genius. His father was a Baptist minister.
Oh, sure. Brilliant person.
He lives in High Springs now.
Didn't he have some lovely defect later or something?
I never heard of him. He said if you want to really be successful in the universities, you have to have a book. You're only recognized.
If you wrote a book.
Yeah. If you've written a book, then you're someone of merit. Yeah.
Huh. That's interesting. Anybody else have any thoughts they want to share? This is the nature of a Vaishnava Sangha. We want to share things with the other people, and we like to have some back and forth. So I want to thank everybody very much for coming and taking part in this tonight. And please come. Please help support this temple, not just for the building and the electric bill, but support it for the consciousness, the opportunities that this place can give to people. This is the gifts we'd like to give. Understand what is the ecstasy of insignificance. Thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki, Vancha Kalpadurubhischa Kripa Sindhu Bheva Cha.